Porsche Taycan versus Tesla Model S have been in the news for a while, I'd say a couple of weeks now since the Taycan unveiling, and there is a new twist now. Apparently, there's some evidence that Porsche is hiding some of the really good stats from maybe Tesla and definitely from all of us, and our own Tom Moloughney, who's also InsideEvs contributor. He's just experienced that. That's right, he went to Europe to drive the Taycan for a couple of days. He did all kinds of tests. He talked to some of the Porsche representatives, and this is something that he believes might be happening. So I'm going to have him over in just a second. He's going to tell us his impressions on of the Taycan. I think he's very impressed. And also we're going to talk about what are the specs that might just be better that Porsche told all of us, and are they even better than Tesla Model S? All of this is coming up next. Welcome to E4Electric, your number one source of unbiased electric car news. Go ahead and click on that subscribe button down there so you don't miss anything moving forward. All right, so today is our weekly segment plugged in with Tom Moloughney. He is a contributor to InsideEvs, and we just hung out at the Frankfurt Auto Show. I flew back. And I did this whole thing with Faraday Future, and he went back to Europe and did this whole thing with Porsche, where he got to drive this car for like 2 or 3 days. He was tweeting. If you follow him on Twitter, you've probably seen some of the pictures and videos. I'll show those pictures and videos to you as well. But he noticed something that I haven't seen in the news before. It looks like some of the stats that he observed for the Taycan are better than Porsche was telling us. Now, we usually try not to have a full conversation because, about anything really, because we want to do it in front of us. But, I was kind of trying to figure out, but like, why would they do it? He does have a good answer for that as well. Of course, your opinion is welcome. And he's just going to tell us, his general impressions about it. Before that, a quick reminder that this video and this channel is sponsored by Byton. Check out their all-electric SUV coming to US, coming to Europe, around $45,000, around 45,000 euros. Make sure to reserve yours because the reservation queue is over 50,000 reservations. The best part is you don't have to put any deposit down. About 60 seconds of your time, and boom, you have a Byton reservation. So go to the description of this video to reserve your Byton today. All right, without further ado, let me bring in Tom and get all of the answers to all of the questions I'm sure are in our heads right now. Tom, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
It's going good. Of course, it would be awesome if we were still doing this in person like we did in Frankfurt, and I think our audience enjoyed it, but I know we're back home now, and you took another trip to Europe. Tell us a little bit about the trip first. Just give us a little bit of setup, and of course, I can't wait to ask you. What are they hiding? So tell us all about it.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun hanging out in Frankfurt, and we did a couple shows there. You came back, went to see Faraday. I get to go back and drive a Taycan for a couple days. I think I got the better of those two deals. I hate to say it.
I think so. Mine is the jet lag. See, I can sleep at night now, but I don't know about you. But yeah, no, that was awesome. And thanks for Porsche, by the way, for not inviting me for that or any of their unveiling events. It's the first time, but whatever. I'm glad you went. So
I tell you're still a little bitter about that.
I'm just a little butthurt about it. Yeah, and they'll hear it. Let's just move on.
Yeah, so it was part of the press drive. I was with the North American journalists. There was somewhere about 12 or 14 of us. I forget exactly how many. It was 2 to a car. I was paired up with Alex Dykes from Alex on Autos. So Alex and I spent a couple days driving from Copenhagen, Denmark to Hamburg, Germany in a Taycan. Really fantastic car, fantastic trip. Everything about it was excellent, and let me tell you, I walked away from that extremely impressed by that car.
Really? I mean, I'm surprised you're saying that because, I mean, you've test driven pretty much all cars out there, including the Tesla Model S P100D, the most powerful Tesla. That's what everyone's comparing them to, and on paper, Tesla Model S P100D has been beating Porsche. Okay, so what's your impression? Did you? Well, tell us about some of the specs that you think might be a little bit off in terms of Tesla might be hiding some real power and some real interesting stats there.
So I think you meant Porsche might be hiding.
Yeah, what did I say? Tesla? Yeah, it's just Porsche.
So,
Yeah.
well, one of the things we found interesting was Porsche has the Taycan listed as the top speed of 161 miles an hour. So on one of the days, Alex and I was able to get our car up to 166, 167, somewhere in there. It's hard to do the exact translation. It was something that I think we did 268 or 269 kilometers an hour. So it's somewhere around 166, 167. So that's a good, 5 or 6 miles an hour faster than what Porsche lists the Taycan's top speed. So when we were back at the hotel that night, we talked to the Porsche representatives, and I had brought that point up and said, you think maybe the speedometer was off. Maybe it was, calibration at such a high speed. And that was quickly shut down. And they said, no, we expect our customers to drive these cars fast. The speedometers are properly calibrated. So I then responded, well, then there's something wrong with this top speed listed, because we were able to beat it. As a matter of fact, another pair of journalists went even faster. I think they went 158 or 159. That we handily beat the top speed. 168 or 169, not 158. So we handily beat the top speed listed and was able to maintain that on the highway, flat surface, weren't going downhill for a long time. And so when I pressed the Porsche representatives, basically the answer was, look, our brand is all about performance. It's all about enthusiasts driving the cars to the limits. A lot of Porsche owners race them on weekends. And so what they said, the numbers that they usually list, the 0 to 60 times, the quarter mile times, the top speed times, aren't necessarily the best that you can get out of the car. It's what they expect the average Porsche owner to be able to get out of the car. So basically what they were saying was they leave some on the table, and then they further back that up by saying, look at some of the full road tests that you see with Motor Trend and Road and Track, the typical outlets that do the real comprehensive road tests. They typically beat the numbers that we put out. And that's because they're professionals driving the cars, and they're getting the absolute most you can squeeze out of the car. So I found that really interesting, that, perhaps the performance figures for the Taycan that are listed, aren't exactly the best that the car can do. Evidently it's not. And the top speed, for one, we were able to prove right off the bat that the top speed is higher. And that's significant because there were a lot of people pointing out the fact that Tesla has the Model S, a P100D top speed listed at 163, while the Porsche Taycan's top speed was listed at 161. And I know a lot of people are saying, geez, Porsche couldn't just make it a couple mile an hour faster so that it's listed, higher than what the Model S is listed at. Evidently, that's not important for Porsche because the car can go faster than that. They're not concerned with being faster on paper, evidently, because they actually have listed performance figures that aren't as good as the car can do.
All right. Well, okay. So that's one of the stats that you notice is definitely above the specs. Do you know if there are others, like maybe 0 to 60? Is also anything else that you suspect that they're also kind of playing down? And yeah, let's figure that out first.
Well, one thing I could tell you, and first of all, let me say, it's been a while since I've driven a P100D. Probably a couple years since I've really taken one out and thrashed it around and really felt the performance. But the Taycan absolutely felt as fast or faster than what I remember. And we did a couple of tests with 0 to 60 runs, but we're using smartphone app, which isn't exactly 100% accurate. And what Alex and I got out of that was 2.7 0 to 60. Now the Taycan is rated at Taycan Turbo S, which is what we were driving, is rated at 2.6. The Model S P100D is 2.4. So you say, okay, there's a 0.2 second advantage. And our times of 2.7 doesn't do anything to disprove that. However, you could take a look at the video. I think you're going to show it later of some of the 0-60 runs that we did. And we did them on a gravel farm road that was not the best surface for really the tires hooking up. You can even see in the beginning of the video, the car does a little fishtailing just a little bit where it's trying to get traction because there's gravel on the road. That's number one. Number two, there were two of us in the car and we had all our luggage because we were traveling from one distance to another. We never stayed at a hotel. When we woke up in the morning, we got all our luggage, put it in the car. And Alex had all kind of video cameras and all different trunks and everything. So we probably had a couple 100 pounds of luggage and two people in the car. And we still got a 2.7 0-60 run. So, I think it's absolutely within the realm of possibilities that the car can do better than 2.6, what Porsche has it listed at.
All right. So now I wish I really went to talk to them about that. But okay, but why? I mean, they knew, and that people were going to compare them to Tesla Model S. They were one of the reasons people were. They were talking about how all these reservation holders were, a lot of them leaving, Tesla from Tesla Model S, going to Taycan. They were obviously trying to push some of the specs and stuff like that. So they've kind of created this competition on top of the obvious, competition that we've created in the media and people created in the community, and which is great. But why, after all of this, they've decided to go with the specs that are losing to Model S, not by much? So what would be the reason?
Well, as I mentioned before, they seem to say that that's in their DNA, to list specs that they think the average person
to
can
lose.
Get.
I mean,
well, I don't. It's hard to say. I don't think Porsche is really sees themselves competing directly against the Model S. There's some overlap, but don't forget, we're talking about a car that costs much more than the Model S. And it's a true sports sedan. The Model S, while it's brutally fast, it's more of like a family sedan that's incredibly fast than a sports car, and so I think Porsche, this isn't going to be a high volume car. They're going to make, I don't know, 20,000, 25,000 a year. I do believe they'll sell all the ones that they make. There's plenty of people with enough money out there to want this. I think it's the best Porsche that's available right now. And if you get a Panamera, which is kind of the same type of a vehicle, and you load it up, the price is about the same. So, while the base Panamera costs less, somewhere around 85, 86,000, once you start really, Porsche's famous for crazy options and everything. Once you start optioning it out, it's not that far from the Taycan. And now the Porsche only released the Turbo and the Turbo S. They're going to have other variants of the Taycan. They're going to have a less expensive variant. Might be $100,000. It might be right in the price range of a Model S. And then probably even a higher performance one somewhere down the road. Porsche loves to do that. That's part of the reasons why they called it the Turbo and the Turbo S, which everybody wants to know why you're calling an electric car a turbo. It makes no sense. The Porsche representatives we spoke to said, look, our customers are used to how we name our cars. We have different levels of vehicles. Turbo and Turbo S slot into our product lineup so the customers know that, okay, it's at this level. And then there's a car that's better than it. There's a car that's less expensive, and they wanted it to stay consistent. I don't think that's a great idea. That's their answer. That's why they're doing it. I think they should have maybe started a new naming system for their electric cars. But listen, it is what it is. And they are going to be coming out with a less expensive Taycan. I don't know if it'll be as fast. Probably won't be. But it's absolutely a fantastic driving car. I thoroughly enjoyed every minute I had behind the wheel. Regenerative braking was something that was a little odd. They don't have very strong liftoff regenerative braking. Now, some people confuse it and say, well, they don't have strong regenerative braking. That's not true. They don't have strong liftoff regenerative braking, which is when you lift off the accelerator, the car slows down, one pedal driving. What Porsche did was they included extremely strong regenerative braking, but on the brake pedal. You do about 90% of your braking is done with regenerative brakes rather than the friction brakes, but it gets used on the brake pedal. The Taycan can regenerate up to 265 kilowatts of energy, which is incredible. Compare that to, say, my Model 3. The most that it can take, I think, is 75 or 76, somewhere around there, kilowatts of regenerative braking is all that it will provide. So think about that the Taycan is like, can provide 3 times the regenerative power that my Model 3 can. So it has very strong regenerative braking capabilities. It's just not on the accelerator pedal.
All right, now you said a couple interesting things. So let me go back. Now, first of all, was it a Porsche representatives confirmed that they are going to be coming out with a cheaper version? Because that was not what they've communicated to most of us in the press releases and so forth. Right? There was absolutely no announcement about the cheaper version. Is this something new that they've told you?
So they wouldn't officially confirm it, but it was kind of like, okay, we follow a certain way when we introduce our cars. We'll introduce a level like this. Then at some point in the future, we might introduce a lower level trim. And then at some point in the future, a higher level trim. We expect to do the same for the Taycan as we do with our other models. So read into that as you'd like. That's basically what they said. So no, they didn't come out and say there's going to be a $100,000 Taycan available soon, but they basically said it and said, look at what we do with our other models. We're going to follow the same pattern. And that's what they do. So I wholeheartedly expect at some point next year that to be announced.
Now, I know you've owned Porsches before, and you obviously test drove all kinds of car before, and there's something that you said, and when we talked on the phone yesterday and or by text, and you just said it again, you believe that this is the best Porsche ever made. Did I hear you correctly? And if so, can you explain?
So I haven't driven every Porsche ever made, but I have driven the Panamera. I've driven new 911s. I think it's the best Porsche available today, is what I said. I've chatted with some of the other journalists during the press drive, extremely experienced journalists. Some of them have driven every Porsche ever made, that have been writing reviews for cars for 20, 30 years. And everybody I spoke to basically said, this is the best Porsche you could buy today.
Okay, no, that's still a big statement, right? Because you kind of assume that the entire lineup today is their best lineup they've ever had. Obviously, just technology always moves forward, and the fact that you're saying it's the best one today, that I take it that's pretty much the best Porsche ever made, which actually is a huge achievement, right? Like, I think this alone it should be applauded. I mean, I'm still gonna stand my ground in terms of like, it's just a little bit worse than Tesla. It cost way too much in turn compared to Tesla. So if I was shopping for the cars, to me, Tesla is a clear choice. One thing they could have beaten them at, which is the interior, I think they failed miserably. But these are just my opinions on this.
I totally disagree. I love the interior.
Which one? Oh, you like the interior?
The Taycan, I thought it was fantastic.
Tell me what you liked about it.
It's different. I hope I have different wants driving a Taycan than I do, say, my Model 3, which I love my Model 3's interior, but it's a totally different vehicle. It's you sit down way low. It's a sports sedan. It's not, Model 3 or even Model S. That's the car. That's actually a picture I took. That's the car I drove. Extremely comfortable. The seats are incredibly supportive. You could make those side bolsters literally pumped them up so that you can't move in any direction. Not that you always want to drive that way, but if you're really getting on it, they're extremely supportive. The screens were fantastic. There's 5 different touch screens in the car. The curved driver's display, I think it's something like 18 inches. Really, really beautifully laid out. Everything's right where you want it. You can configure it to have all the stuff that you want. You could have a map in the middle. You could have the whole thing spread out to an expansive navigation map. The passenger gets his own touch screen that he can do navigation over there, music. Then you've got the center console screen for HVAC, battery state of charge. The passengers in the back seat have their own touch screen to manipulate their HVAC. And one of the things that Porsche absolutely did copy from Tesla was the heating and ventilation. So the vents you can't move. You've got to manipulate them through the touchpad screen, just like Tesla. You can direct them to different directions.
Do you like that?
Up and down. Excuse me?
Do you like that?
I liked it. That's one of the things that I actually liked a little bit better on the Porsche than on my Model 3.
No, but I mean generally, like for example, to me, and this is what a lot of people said, that a lot of times when you're driving and you just want to kind of like change where the vents are pointing to, or maybe even the temperature, you almost don't have to take your eyes off the road because it's very mechanical, right? You can just do it. But if you're driving, then you have to quit the screen and get another screen and try to mess around with it. To me, that was kind of cool, but I'm not going to use it. Did you have a different experience?
Sure. Well, I get your point, and I think it's a valid point. I also like the way this system incorporated. You don't have to, like, for instance, you can't reach the vents on the passenger side of the car if you're driving, but you can manipulate them with the touchpad screen. Like if there's no passenger and you want all the vents shooting at you, you can do that with the touch.
This is literally a far-reaching argument for that for that feature. But okay, listen, forget about the vents. There's other questions I wanted to ask you about that. We don't have to agree. I mean, I think this audience and the market will decide. I mean, I'm all for the screens, by the way. I like the screens and I like their user interface. I just think they just kind of randomly place them around without actual design around it. That's all I'm saying. That, you know what I mean? I love the screens. You know I love the screens. I mean, I love Byton, and nobody likes more screens than me. But okay, so there are a couple other things that I want to talk to you about. One, let's talk about, well, we're going to talk about charging in a second, but let's talk about this, which I thought it was a ridiculous idea, but then I think today, you know, Bollinger just unveiled their, all-electric pickup truck, and they also have the same, what I consider a problem, a 2-speed gearbox. Like, I thought we were done with transmissions and gearboxes when we switched to electric cars, but Porsche brought it back, and a lot of people argue is that because they were not able to achieve the same performance as Tesla did, and this was kind of a hack to get there. Tell me a little bit about your experience with this, and do you agree that this is really a step backwards in many different ways?
I don't think so. And I actually think that you're going to start to see more EVs come out with 2-speed gearboxes. ZF, who's a very enormously large automotive supplier, they're about to release their 2-speed transmission. So auto manufacturers will have an option. If they want it, they have one off the shelf that they can put in their car. Porsche had to go out and design this thing. And I'm sure they didn't want to spend the money that they did on it if it didn't work, if it didn't make the car more efficient and help them have a higher top speed, then they wouldn't put it in the car. They wouldn't have spent all that money if they could have just went with a single gear. I'd prefer the feel of a single gear because you can definitely feel that gear shift when you're under hard acceleration, somewhere around 55 to 65 miles an hour. It's a kick. You know, you get that kick, and I actually, haven't missed it. So in all my EVs, I kind of like that single speed all the way up. But if it works, If it provides better efficiency, better performance, then I'm all for it. I certainly wouldn't say that it's a step backwards personally. If it makes the car a better car, then they should use it.
All right. Well, I mean, my argument with that is that why do they need it when they could, Tesla achieves it without the gearbox and the performance is better. First of all, secondly, maintenance, like the whole one of many reasons I like electric car and the whole, revolution of electric cars is just less crap to worry about, less moving parts, less maintenance, less stuff to fix, less stuff, less parts to manufacture. And I feel like this is a step back because of that. And obviously,
I agree. It may give more punch at higher speeds. Like I said, when I drove my Model S P100Ds, I was here in the US where I couldn't really, I couldn't top it out. I couldn't drive at 140, 150 miles an hour. But with the Taycan over on the Autobahn, we were able to spend a good deal of time at very high speeds. We didn't just run it up to 167, 168 once and then drive 70 miles an hour the whole time. We spent a good deal of time at 130, 140, 150 miles an hour. And I can tell you this, at 130 miles an hour, when you step on it on the Taycan, it throws you back in the seat at 130 miles an hour. So I don't know if the gearing had something to help with that, but all the way up to the top speed, the car has incredible amount of power. I mean, it's brain crushing off the line. It pins you back in the seat like the P100D does. But no other EV out there has been able to make that kind of a performance. No other gas car that I've driven is that kind of incredible torque. It was an incredibly fun car to drive. And if the 2-speed gearbox is part of that reason, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, normally I say, listen, people don't care how things work inside. Like when people talk about battery chemistry and all that stuff, like, nerds are like us and a lot of maybe even some of our viewers and readers maybe care, but overall consumers don't. So however it works inside, I don't care. In this case, I care because, obviously the ride is not as smooth, but just more parts. I feel like it's, all right, okay. I will just have to work this out in my therapy. So now let me ask you this, and because I remember it because you took a picture of this car charging. One of the things that it was supposed to be Tesla, and it kind of did, I guess, if you compare it to the Tesla Model S, though Model 3 has just as high of a charge rate. Porsche was supposed to charge very, very quickly, right? And I always try to not get into what the charge rate is, and overall to me, what really matters, again, what I think matters to consumer is, how many miles you can gain back into your battery per given number of minutes, right? So tell us a little bit about your charging experience, which networks you used. Was it easy? Was there enough of them? And were you satisfied with the speed of charging? And anything else you wanna tell us about your experience?
So Porsche had each day that we drove, midway through our drive, every day we drove, a couple hundred, maybe a little over 200 miles. So every day they had us scheduled to stop at an Ionity station along the route because we had these given routes that we're supposed to stick to. And for the most part we did, but we ventured off a little bit, Alex and I. So we used the Ionity stations and we were able to achieve a charge rate of 260 kilowatts. It only holds that until about 30%. And then it dropped down to 150 kilowatts, but it held 150 kilowatts all the way to almost 80%, somewhere around 76, 77%. It started dropping down. But once we hit 80%, we went from 5 to 80% in 24 minutes. Porsche claims 22.5 minutes, but it took us a minute and a half longer, and it was because our battery temperature wasn't ideal. Now, part of charging any electric car, Tesla, Taycan, any car, the battery temperature has to be at the right level for you to get maximum charge rate. It has to be warm. We pulled in at around 29 degrees Celsius, and the Porsche engineers that were there said that we needed to be closer to 33 degrees Celsius to get the full charge rate and hold it as long as it could. So, or at least initially have the full charge rate, not hold it, because the battery warms up pretty quickly once you're charging at that speed. So it maybe took us a minute or so to get up to the full charge rate, and that's why it took us a minute and a half longer. But that's really, very, very minor. But another thing that we noted that was really good was the car, even all the way up to 95%, we were still charging at like 55 or 60 kilowatts. So the car can hold a charge, and it charges really quickly. Now, to your point, as far as how many miles per time, the car isn't EPA range rated yet. It's still just WLTP. That came in at somewhere around 275, I think, mile range, the WLTP, which is a little bit more liberal. So the EPA rating is going to be lower. It's hard to judge off of our test driving because we were really driving the car hard. And both days we just got a little bit over 200 miles per charge. But don't forget, we were stomping on it. We were doing 0 to 60 runs. That's not included the ultra high speed driving runs, because when we were driving at like 150 to 160 miles an hour, we did that for about 50 miles. Now that I think about it, we drove at that speed about 50 miles, and we used a third of the battery in 50 miles. But that's to be expected. At 150, 160 miles an hour, you're going to use a tremendous amount of energy. But driving it the way we were driving from point A to point B, we only averaged somewhere around 205 to 210 miles per charge.
All right. Wow. Okay. I mean, I'm sure there will be lots of comparisons and coming up the more and more people test drive it. But looks like you're more impressed with this car than you thought before going in there. Would that be correct to say?
I am, Alex. I expected it to be a great car. I expected it to be a great performer, but spending, 2 days in it and driving 400 to 500 miles, I absolutely fell in love with it. It drives fantastically. The road feel, the steering feel, the balance, the braking. At one point we were going over 150 miles an hour, and a car came over into the fast lane. I guess didn't see us coming to overtake. Alex was driving at the time, and he really had to get on the brakes. We had to get from 150 miles an hour down to 100 miles an hour in an extremely short period of time. And that car just, for a split second, I thought we were going to rear end the guy, but Alex was able to get it down and have plenty of time. Just the overall performance of the car, it's an amazing car, amazing performance. Like I said, for me to say it's the best Porsche available today speaks a lot, and I believe it is. It's absolutely a fantastic car, and I think the people that buy them are going to absolutely love them, and we're going to convert a lot of gas Porsche lovers to electric once they get their Taycan.
Yeah, and that's why I think everybody should be behind it. I don't care that it's not as good or way too expensive than than Tesla. I mean, if the people are going to be switching to those from gas cars, I think everybody wins. So, and I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. It looked like from your pictures and videos that you've been posting. And no, you cannot borrow $200,000 from me just before you even ask. All right. Well, so listen, there's obviously more to it than we just talked about, though. I think we kind of covered everything. I'm still very shocked. Yes.
One more thing I want to hit on, if you don't mind, before.
Of course.
Out. So, there was a lot of talk about the Nuremberg Ring and how the Porsche Taycan had a time of 7 minutes and 42 seconds. So Elon, put a Model S Plaid together, shipped a couple of them over there. That was actually going on while we were there, and the car, the Model S, actually broke down while we were there. If you remember, it had to be towed away, and the Porsche people didn't really say anything about it. They just kind of had some smirks on their face. The journalists were really making fun of Tesla a little bit about that. But the point I want to make is Porsche, I think Porsche expected Tesla to do that. I think they knew that Tesla was going to try to do something to beat their time. And just so you know, that 7 minutes and 42 seconds was done on a Taycan Turbo, not a Turbo S. So they didn't send their best and fastest to do that time. I think they fully expected Tesla to do what they did, to come out quick, beat the time. And at some point in the future, Porsche is going to send one of their drivers to do it with a Turbo S and beat the time that they set earlier.
That's interesting that you said that, because I think everybody was saying how Tesla was waiting for Porsche to do the record and then bring in their plaid version of the Model S. But it looks like maybe Porsche was ahead of them. But listen, it's entertaining. And by the way, I don't care.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
This is fun stuff.
Yeah, and it gets into the news and people pay more attention to it. And these are now two beautiful cars. One thing I'm going to say, even though I wish it looked like the Mission E, it is still a very beautiful car. Now, I've seen it in person in pretty much 6 or 7 colors now, and you definitely seen it even more. I can definitely confirm it's an absolutely stunning car. Still like the Model S more myself, but it's, a matter of taste.
It's a different car.
It is a different car. No, I agree.
I love the Model S.
Yeah.
It's my Model 3. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, you can't trade it for the Taycan. Well, so, well, I'm sorry you're back to just driving a regular Tesla Model 3. I mean, it's, tough life for you, I understand. But all right, listen. I know you've been posting a bunch of pictures and videos throughout this trip, as you always do. Amazingly enough, you did not get into any fights with any of the brands, but I'm sure that's coming at some point. So why don't you tell my audience once again where they can find you, read the articles you've already published about your experiences, and follow you on Twitter.
Sure. So as Alex mentioned, I'm a staff writer at InsideEvs. Head over to InsideEvs, check out what I'm doing. And then you could also check me out on Twitter at Tom Moloughney.
All right. Well, so, and all of that information is going to be in the description of this video. Listen, man, this was awesome. I wish I was there with you. Hey, listen, you had another Alex with you, so I guess you were fine. So definitely sounds like.
And he's a cool guy too.
Oh yeah. No, I've met him at the LA Auto Show. He's awesome. He's definitely a great guy and has a great channel. And so yeah. All right, man. Listen, hopefully I'll get to drive it at some point. And I can judge for myself, but definitely very interesting, man. This is something that haven't heard before, and we'll see what comes out of it. So, all right, I will see you next time when we'll explore more interesting topics next week.
Very good. See you next week, Alex.
All right. Well, this was fun because I'm telling you, Tom gets like awesome stories. This is why I love having him on this channel. When he told me that, like when he was, I think, still there, he was like, dude, I don't think the stats are as. And I was like, wait, what? We must make a video about it. So anyway, of course, write questions and comments in the description of in the comment section of this video. What you can get in the description of this video is obviously the link to where you can find Tom on the InsideEvs. I think he already has at least one article, but I think there's a couple of other ones coming. So definitely check it out. Also, thank you to one of my Patreons, one of my newer Patreons, Kevin Chandler. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of my Patreons for supporting me and being able to do this full time. If you want to join and watch my videos live, which is one of the perks there, go to patreon.com/e4electric, and that's what you can find in the description of this video, along with, of course, a link to sign up with our free VIP list, where you get I was so excited about this topic. I think I've used up all of my energy, but we do bonus articles. If you're already on that list, I know a lot of people really love it. So sign up. It's free. And before I run out of my battery power, I'm gonna say a bye to you guys, and of course, don't forget to comment in the comment section. Looking forward to that. Other than that, see you next time, and remember to stay charged.